Today, we're diving into a story where the ninja world faces a brand new challenge. What if Naruto made harem? With Kurotsuchi. If you enjoy, then please like, share, and do comments. Konoha. The sun rose over the village. The five faces on the Hokage Tower beam under the amazing bright rays provided by the potent sun. These aforementioned beams also affect the face of a blissfully sleeping teen that promptly rolls over. He grumbles as the alarm clock goes off, and with a flick of his hand, the alarm clock is sent flying into the wall before it breaks. I'll fix that another time. Foolish alarm. The team mumbled. The boy is about to drift off yet again to a land unknown. Before small yips grow in range and volume, before coming to his ear as a very warm tongue appears and licks his face. Knock it off. Koshi mumbles. John Namikaze Uzu. Maki Naruto, all around savior of the shinobi nation. The fox with red fur and two tails does not and continues to lick away at the sleeping teen. Nars sighs before getting up and laying his back on his bedpost. As he awakes, his sight leads him to looking around his huge bedroom. His bed was king size with silk white covers and too many pillows to count. Window to his right was covered with navy blue drapes and a door that led to a balcony if you would move the drapes. To his left was a huge walk-in closet with the door open. Many different Jonin outfits and different colored flag jackets visible. A pile of shoes and boots lay out upon the floor. His black tiles were filled with dirt and other things from his constant moving through the day. Next to the closet was a huge chest drawer with 4 drawers in a nice hunter green. One drawer is open and a neatly folded stack of white t-shirts are visible. The door to his room was 3 paces from the drawer. On the right of the door was a wall filled with many weapons. Kunai, 3-prong kunai, ninjutsu, daggers, shuriken, and ambu mask, ambu armor. A cloak with blood and flames at the bottom, and a huge clan painting of a whirlpool on the ceiling in dedication to his mother and the Uzumaki clan of Whirlpool. In the corner between the weapons and window is a mannequin, dressed in Hokage robes with a Jonin outfit under it and the hat. All in all, his room was pretty nice. Nar stretched before picking up the medium-sized fox in his arms and walked out the door. As he turns left and passes 4 doors on his left and staircases leading downstairs to his right, he opens up the door directly in front of him into his bathroom. Black and gray marble was everywhere. Within this room, which consisted of the tub, the sink, and the floor, he placed the fox to the floor and began his morning routine. Brush teeth, shower, fix up his golden hair that reminded many people of his father from back in the day, and then head on out for the day. Dressed up in standard Konoha uniform and putting his hide aid on forehead before grabbing his pouches and equipment. He specifically puts on 2 pouches on both thighs and picks up 2 cruel-looking daggers before spinning them and putting them in 2 side holsters on the outsides of his thighs. As he heads downstairs, he stops halfway as he remembered something rather important. It's my day off. Naruto sighed before going back upstairs and disrobing. He returns everything neatly, a habit beaten into him by Sununade, before putting on a skin-tight navy blue shirt and white pants with a black jacket halfway zipped up and matching crystal clean white ninja sandals. He ties his hide aid around his neck and yips to the fox, which swiftly jumps onto him and wraps his body around his neck. Let's enjoy this day, Nokiyoshi, said Naruto as he steps outside, his fox companion yipping in agreement. 2 minutes later, Konoha shopping district. Ino Yamanaka was bored. Plain bored. There was nothing to do today. No missions. Her parents gave her the day off. Half of the ninja she knew or wanted to hang out with were currently on missions. The only kunoichi she could think of to relax with was busy. And then that was not mentioning her roommate Sakura, who was working endless shifts in the hospital. I hate days like this, mumbled Ino. That makes two of us, said a deep voice. Ino whipped around as only one person had such a distinctive voice. Anar, said Ino as she smiled at the said person who was walking up towards her. She had to look away swiftly to hide her blush. Who knew that Nar would fill out like this? Dare she say it? After saving Konoha during the pain attack a few years ago, she began to see Nar in a different light. She just never got the chance to hang out with him. Nar almost stopped walking once he seen the dangerous smirk on her face. Almost. So Nar, what are you up to on this fine day? No missions for you, I see. Does that mean you're free? Asked Dino in a semi-interested voice. The way she sounded, Nar couldn't be so sure she was up to something. Most blondes were. Yeah, free day for me, replied Naruto as he scratched the fox on his neck. His eyebrows rose as he seen Ino sway her hips towards him, causing him to sweat just a little bit. Ino wasn't ugly. She had pale blonde hair that went down to her mid-back. Today, she was wearing purple sneakers with the tightest of blue jeans. Her outfit ended with a purple figure was exquisite, testifying to the long hours she spent training her body to be at its peak. Naruto could still see the hidden seal on her back that represented her being a part of Ambu. She was head interrogator and an excellent one at that. She continued her strut before stopping at his face and invading his privacy. Not that he minded, as they were nose to nose. Ino smirked and latched onto his hands. Then we're going shopping since you make so much money on those missions you keep talking about. I want some shoes, some dresses, a new purse, and some bathing suits. Some. Nar sighed as he was led to his fate of spending more money. He didn't mind though. It was at least something to do. Besides, how bad could it be? 3 hours later. Are you serious? Yes, I am serious. I refuse. You're crazy. There is no way I am doing that. Oh, come on. Just take it off. I am not taking it off. You can't make me. Are you sure? Do you really want to test me in making you do something against your will? This was the scene that people were seeing and trying to stay out of. If anyone knew of these two blondes, it was that they were extremely headstrong and determined to not do anything they didn't want to. As it was though, Nar was being asked, better yet, forced to put on a shirt. But not just any shirt. Shirts in a plural sense. 17 shirts of various shades, colors, and styles in addition to jeans, shorts, slacks, shoes, and hats and coats. Nar just did not want to be bothered with that. He already spent loads of money feeding Ino's shoe addiction. Why did she love so much? Purple. Purple this, purple that. It was too much. Actually. Take that back. He forgot he was a fiend for orange as well. So now he had Ino in his face growling, to which he returned with equal fervor. He refused to back down from this challenge. He was Utsuaki Naruto, Jonin of Konohagakure, son of the 4th Hokage, taught by the legendary Kakashi Hideki, the copycat nin, and the late Toad Sanin Jera. No, was a very viable option. Ino was about to choke him before coming to her senses and smirking. Nar did not like the sign of that, as he knew how devious she could be. Watch me, Naruto. You will put on everything, said a deviously smiling Ino as her hands slowly went to her back pocket so Nar would not know what was about to happen. You can't make. Nar stopped talking as in a swift second his shirt was ripped and slowly The article of clothing fell to the floor, which caused a chain reaction of stopping women and slowing down time. Strong and finely tuned muscles were the thoughts running through her mind about Naruto's body. Extremely muscular and sturdy. She should have done this earlier. Nar was a hunk. The feel for him began to manifest even more than before. Nar watched in slow motion as his shirt fell to the floor. He began breaking out in hives as he knew the effect this would cause. Drooling women with hearts in their eyes would rush him. If he was around when the shirt hit the floor. He grumbled at the blushing and smiling Ino. That was dirty of her to have a hidden kunai in her pocket. In a yellow flash, Naruto was in the dressing room with all of the clothing before the shirt hit the ground and out the room at the register. With his shirt miraculously taken along with Ino. Ino smiled. Told you, she chirped as she latched onto his arm and leaned into his shoulder. Females are so troublesome, mumbled Nar, channeling Shikamaru as he began paying and putting his newly acquired clothing in a huge storage seal. Good thing he decided to take these with him. Before anything else was said, a huge grumbling noise was heard. Ino blushed as she looked away from a surprised Nar, who soon after laughed. Let's go to my place and get some food, said Nar as he led her to some food. Ino blushed at that, but said nothing as she knew he meant strictly food. They were friends, sort of. Ino blanched at the thought that she really didn't know much about Nar. All these years of watching him make a fool of himself, asking Sakura on dates, pranking the teachers, and being a loudmouth. Who knew he would becoming one of, if not the strongest shinobi in Konoha? She smiled. Time to ask questions and learn about Nar. Fine by me. So, Nar, what do you like to? The two sat by the pond in Naruto's estate, watching the goose, frog, and sunset while enjoying some sandwiches that Naruto's clones whipped up. Ino had learned a lot about Naruto and him about her. After the harsh story about his life before he got older, which made Ino curl into him crying, making him blush a bit. They continued talking and realized they both shared a love of flowers, training, motivating, and annoying people at the same time. Even read the same manga, which brought a surprised funny face from Nar, causing Ino to laugh very loud and joke on him about how his face looking like a gaping fist. Nar suddenly caught a gleam as he held some of the pie he had made. Hey, Ino, Nar said as he discreetly at his hand, holding the pie back. What is it, Naruto? K. Ino never got to finish her sentence as a wet splash sound landed on her face. She slowly widened her eyes in surprise and touched her face to remove the substance dripping down her face, ignoring the loud sounds of laughter. Look at your face. Now, Ino. You look very sweet and you smell like the best of pies, laughed Nar as he rolled on his side and tried to push himself up despite his gut hurting from his laughter. Pie on her face thrown by Nar. He must die. Nar whispered a voice. For some odd reason, every animal in the clearing left, including his foxy companion. The sky grew dark. The roses withered and died. And killer intent began leaking. No one jokes with Ino's face. No one. You were the words that came from Ino. Her head down and body shaking before a small chuckle came from her throat. Her hand found her way to some soy sauce that came with the rice they ate. Her other hand grabbed onto his shirt. Shelp! Shrieked Ino, as she tossed the soy sauce onto Naruto's face and hair. The two then began a food fight before Naruto tackled Ino, and they went rolling down the hill they were on. Before they fell into the pond and came up to start tossing water on each other's face. All the while laughing like little school children. The two continued until Nar swam towards her, grabbing her around the waist. He then brought her and himself underwater before emerging and then throwing her back in laughing. She never rose up, but he felt himself being lifted up before landed in the water back first as Ino emerged laughing. Nar came up and the two panted in exhaustion before Nar smiled. You look beautiful when you're soaking wet. Did you know that? Anyway, let's go get cleaned up, Nar innocently said as he made his way out the water, never seeing the small blush that lit her face up. Nar was embarrassed, but it was not his fault. He let himself get so open while his eyes and mouth anyway, and the bottle of water he had in his hand was definitely making a puddle at his feet, and his face felt hot. Was he coming down with a fever? He doubted it. His reason was simple. The person coming down those steps just might have made time freeze with such a simple amount of movement. He would start the description with her hair. Her usually ponytail was abandoned and was wild and untamed, giving her a very exotic look. Her eyes were shining under the lowering sun as it reflected and showed mirth, humor, and mischievously. But the fact that the white shirt she had on was his old shirt from when he was 12. Even on her it was big but somehow hugged to her curves and made her look so beautiful. Then were the shorts that stopped at her mid-upper thighs. These were also from when he was 12. They were a nice shade of green, and in his pocket as he never took it out was a small gem he had found exploring the forest after a training session. Even in simplicity, Ino looked stunning. At that moment, the one thought that ran through his mind was Sakura. They truly did not know what happened, but it did. They had talked the night away. It was now 12 in the morning. Luckily, neither had a mission in the morning. The two sat on Naruto's couch and talked some more about things. About Naruto learning his heritage and learning about family. What kind of jutsu was he learning? What kind of people had Ino had to interrogate, as she was now head of interrogations after being an apprentice under Ibiki? The conversation led into the night before Ino headed to her house. She knew her roommate would ask her questions if she got home any later. Naruto walked Ino home, telling her to keep all she had on and giving her the scroll that held all of her shopping items. As they walked through Konoha, the village was somewhat silent, but still bustling with nightly routines and activities as people stumbled out the bar or were heading to the clubs. Ninja needed to have fun because they could die at any moment. Finally, they reached Ino's door. The butterflies in both stomachs were not appreciated. Thank you, Nar. Ino finally said as she turned towards him. Nar smiled. Anytime. We should do this again. Throwing pie in your face was truly the best prank I have done in years. Nar said, chuckling, to which Ino punched him on the arm playfully before she invaded his space again and wrapped her arms around his neck. His breath hitched and his body automatically felt warm and accepted. We should do this again. Naruto __, this is the most fun I've had in months. Ino practically purred into his ear playfully as she released him and headed to her door, pulling her keys out. Or would have had she not remembered that her keys were in her jeans, which were in the scroll, but felt something poking out of the pocket. She decided to look at it later. A little embarrassed, she knocked on the door, knowing that Sakura was up. Have a good night, Ino, Nar said with a smile as he retreated down the steps and made his way down and back to his mansion. Ino watched him go. It was always the same image. Him going into a fight, him going to avenge the dead of his fellow nin back against Kuzu. Him going off to face Sasaki. She was always watching him walk away. But now, after today, she wanted to walk with him, be with him. She wanted Naruto, Hokage Tower, Sununade, Senju, Gautam Hokage of the Great Konoha, the third and still alive member of the Sannin. Powerful strength and incredibly sharp mind and the best medic nin in the whole of Konoha and possibly the elemental nations. Sake. Gamatsuki HMM Grilber was asleep and mumbling incoherent sentences currently. Yes, yes, she was. Leave a message after the slam. Sununade lifted her head up in a rush as Shizune came in, hiding her giggle. Sununade. Sama, the ambassador for Kumo has arrived. Sununade rubbed the cold from her eyes as she nodded in approval. Send her in, she replied. She then snapped her fingers and called the Anbu to get the best person she could think of for this mission. Get me, Nar. Ichimaru. Ramen booth. Nar smiled as he put his fourth ramen bowl down on the counter and patted his belly before looking down at his foxy companion also finished his bowl. On the floor. Sure do pack them tight, don't you, Tui? San. Said Nar as he chuckled. Only the best for my number one customer, Tui stated with a laugh. Nar smiled before a voice called him. The same voice from all those years. Doli. Nar closed his eyes and paid no attention to the voice. When you start calling me by my given name, that's when I'll acknowledge your presence. Naruto said with a smirk as his best friend, Uchiha Sasaki, sat down at the ramen stand and ordered a miso ramen. I'll think about it, but until then, your name will stay the same, Dabi. Sasaki replied as he picked up his chopsticks and began eating. Nar sighed before smiling. So, how was the mission? Gained another fangirl. Nar said, causing the John besides him to sigh. After a few years of returning to Konoha, the girls just wouldn't leave him alone. While it wasn't on the same scale as Naruto, which he joked on him about it to no end, it still wasn't far off from the academy days. Shut up, he replied as he continued eating. So, when is the wedding? Nar jested, with a straight face. After a few years of playing the scene, Sasuke finally smartened up and got together with Sakura. Naruto wasn't as crushed as he thought he would be, but felt happy that his friend at least told him of his decision. We aren't getting married yet, Yubaka. Sasaki mumbled. Yeah, I know. It's still funny watching her make you carry her bags by her products. Wait for her at the salon. Nar laughed as Sasaki tried to stab him with chopsticks. Sasaki stopped and smiled before looking downwards into his bowl. Who knew that rebuilding a clan would be so hard? Takes a lot of patience and politics. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Nar smiled and nodded in understanding. Before a small and unnoticeable twitch occurred on his left eyebrow before he drank a glass of water with a small smirk. Ah, so how can I help you, Ambuzen? Nar said, without looking up before the figure appeared in a blur. The Hokage has requested you in her office, the Ambu stated. All right, maybe I can go on a mission now. Nar said with a smile before giving Sasaki a pound, placing his money on the counter and wishing the old man at the counter a goodbye as he scooped up Kiyoshi and used a shunshin to head to the office. Hokage office. So, how was your trip? Sununade asked the ambassador. Pleasant. Cannot complain. No disturbances. Just ready to do what needs to be done for my village, replied a female-toned ambassador, her voice clearly sounding a bit bored. Sununade gave a knowing smirk as she wrapped her fingers together and put them under her chin. Are you sure you're doing this for your village or for yourself? Said with a smirk. The female said nothing, but the small blush was enough to answer her. She currently wished that something would come and save her from being asked any more questions about her real reason for being there. Luckily, it came. Suddenly, both looked up into the window as wind flew in the office, whipping around paper. and bringing a huge gust of wind before it suddenly stopped, revealing Nar in full ninja gear, flag jacket with a navy blue long-sleeved turtleneck, black slacks, straps on both legs, holding his special daggers and combat boots. With his eyes closed, leaned on the window sill, elbows folded in his cool sage mode pose. You called boss, Sama? Nar asked in his smooth voice. Wind blowing his hide and chopstick twitching in his mouth before losing all of his points as he was bashed into the ground. From a growling Sununade. You've sent all the just stamped papers to the floor. Gakyunade growled as she grabbed Nar by his flag jacket. Like you actually read those pieces of paper. I bet you just woke up from your daytime nap, Granny. Nar growled in return as he was lifted in the air before being placed on his feet. What did I tell you about calling me that? Sununade said as a knot formed on her face and she bashed her forehead into Naruto's and growled. Not to call you that before your daily glass of milk as you get grumpy. Well, I'm not scared, Grandma. Nar shouted as he grasped his hands into a fist. I'm going to kill you. And revive you to kill you again. Bring it then. I don't mind hitting an elderly lady. Oh yeah, ehh. The argument was cut to a sudden halt as the two gazed at the blank-faced sweat-dropping ambassador. Naruto blushed in embarrassment as Koshi was laid in the kunoichi's lap and was currently purring in contentment. As the person stroked his fur, the awkwardness was stopped as Sununade was in her desk in a flash and Naruto was still standing in his standard Jonin outfit, but he remained staring at the familiar kunoichi from Kumo. Pale, blonde hair in a bold cut style, but longer stopping around her shoulders with electric blue eyes. She had on a semi-tight gray shirt, confusing Naruto as he threatened to break through the shirt, short black skirt that stopped at mid-thighs, revealing her slender legs. She had a standard katana on her back with a leather strap, and her Kumo hit 8 wrapped on her right bicep. Her blank look at Naruto reminded him of the looks Neji, Gar, and Sasaki all seemed to fancy. Naruto's face turned a bit red as he quickly turned away and addressed the Hokage. So, what's the mission, Bosama? Nar said as he crossed his arms and got serious, if only to impress the cute kunoichi. Oh, how he was failing. Your mission is simple. You will be escorting Simui-san here around the village and keep her entertained, said Sununade with a small smirk as she knew Nar would come dressed for a full mission. Nar stared at her before looking at Samui, then back at Sununade, then back at Simui before face paling. This is the last time I come dressed in mission garb. Nar mumbled as he pulled his neck and instantly his ninja garb was torn off his body, revealing his outfit from before. The two kunoichi looked at him in confusion at this change. Naruto stared in confusion as well. What? I get bored, so I got a nice seal that can put me in ninja gear on my wrist. Anyway, come on, Simui-chan. Let us paint the town orange. Nar didn't give her a chance to respond as he grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms, making her blush a little. With Koshi already on his shoulder, he used a wind shunt to mess up the papers some more. Laughter fading with him. I am going to kill him. Minato. Your son will be joining you soon. Sununade thought as she called some genin in to clean the mess up. Village. Naruto walked with the blank-faced Simui throughout the village, thinking of what he could do to get her to be entertained while ignoring the looks the female population kept giving him and glaring at the male population for looking at the kunoichi like a piece of meat. All right, I got it. I'll take you on a tour of the village. I'm sure you didn't get the chance to look around. Seeing as how we kind of had an invasion, Naruto said with a smile. Sure thing, Goldie, Simui mumbled in a bored tone as she stretched her back, complaining about her back issues. Nar looked at her with a squinted eye and open mouth, making her smirk. But that was all he was going to get from her. You don't laugh much, do you? Said Nar suddenly as he leaned into Simui's confused face. What is there to laugh about? If it is funny, I will laugh. Now back up. You're too close to my face, and I need space. Simui said as she slowly pushed Nar away. Nar smiled a bit. It has been a while since he met a female that didn't smile. Not since Koyuki and Sheen. Demon Country. Oh. Said person opened her eyes from her meditation before a small blush and smile appeared on her face. It is time for Nar to help me, she said in a low voice. Spring Country. I don't want to get married to any of these men, Koyuki said as she threw all the pictures of bachelors to the floor. The hundreds of pictures being spread on the floor. She finally turned to the advisor who looked at her in surprise. I need a strong man, a determined, charming man who knows me and loves me. For me, I need Koyuki looked at the picture on her desk. A small smile appeared on her face. Then she sneezed. Koyuki-sama. Koyuki lifted her face up and made her way out of the office. Call my carriage. I'm going to get Naruto Uzumaki. Konahua. Oh, yelled a voice. Tisu. Simui said with a look of small interest as she held it up. Nar looked at the tissue before giving her an embarrassed grin and taking it. Thanks, he said as he wiped his nose and put it in his pocket before smiling at her in a very suggestive manner. I know what I'm going to do for you, Naruto said as he stopped walking. Oh, and what is that? Said Simui in a serious tone, eyebrows raised in curiosity. Simple. I'm going to make you laugh, said Nar as he walked on. Simui looked at him before shaking her head. Good luck, she whispered as she followed along. I've actually got a lot of good luck. You should ask Bosama, said Nar as he was now behind her. She had no chance to ask how he got behind her or how he heard her as she felt her hand being grabbed again and led to a place she had no idea. All right, Simui-chan, let's go have some fun, Nar said as he ran off. Simui looking at him for a few minutes before smirking again. Maybe, just maybe, it won't be so bad. Hours later, Simui finally cracked. She finally laughed. But Nar was not laughing with her. He had taken her everywhere. The training grounds where he cracked jokes about Team 7, receiving blank faces. The mall where he met Rock Lee and Guy and saved Simui from the horrid genjutsu of them hugging. The shopping districts where he cracked jokes about his old outfits. The arcade where he beat her in every game. The academy where he told her of his class clown tendencies, producing a Lully's mirk. Then went to Ichimaru's for lunch trying to get her to laugh by playing around with his food. And now they were back at his house. And all it took for her to laugh was for him to slip on a banana and crash down a flight of stairs. This is so not funny. Can you at least help me up so I can take you to the final place for the day before my mission ends? Nar said with a groan. This fall was so not cool. Koshi just loved to leave fruits on the floor at the most inopportune times of life. At least she laughed. Sure, Simui said as she extended her hand, then pulled it back, causing him to crash onto the floor again. Nar grumbled as she walked past him. Or she would have if he had not grabbed her ankle and brought her crashing to the floor. Ha! Now, who's laughing now? He replied as he got up and then in turn got leg tripped. Simui smiled as she crawled over towards him and bashed his face to the ground. But the floor brings out your eyes, she said in a joking tone. Nar looked up in shock. You just told a joke. Nar said with a raised eyebrow. Yes, I did. I can be fun if I want to. I just like to make people work for it, replied Simui as she attempted to get up. Nar sprang into action as he tackled her down and began wrestling with her. Well, looks like I'll have to work some more, Naruto said with a smile. The hurt a laugh. Nar stopped and a cruel smirk appeared. Ticklish, are we? Nar said as he began moving his fingers in the air. Simui's eyes widened before Naruto plunged his fingers into her sides, causing her to burst into loud laughter. She flipped it on him and the two began laughing some more before Nar and Simui stopped. With Simui on her back and Naruto on top of her. Told you, I can get you to laugh, Nar said as he gazed in her blue eyes. I suppose you were right, Simui said with a smirk. The room turned silent as the other looked deep into the other's eyes. Literally, sparks flew from the amount of peering the two were doing. Unconsciously, one began to lean into the other, not knowing what was about to happen, but not willing to stop it. The lips felt dry yet urgent to connect, and the passion that began to emerge from simply looking at one another was unbearable. But a loud yip broke the chemistry that was formulating between the two, and just like that, the moment was over. It was then that they noticed the position they were in. And the two literally flew off of one another. Let's go. I want to take you to one more place, Naruto said quickly as he grabbed a nice trench coat and led her outside, not making eye contact. Simui looked at him with a thoughtful expression. Very respectful, surprising, considering who his sensei was. Fun, but knows how to be serious, strong, determined. Maybe he can be the one. Simui thought as she was led outside. The two walked in silence as she knew if she asked where they were going, that he would not answer. Eventually, the two came up a flight of stairs. After some climbing, Naruto walked her to a cliff before Simui caught sight of the most amazing view. This is the top of the cage's monument. I used to come up here and watch the view and still do from time to time. This is the best part of the village. Sitting here on my father's head and watching the village, it's like I'm letting him know that I'm watching and protecting Konoha for him, you know, Naruto said as he sat down and patted for her to do the same. As she sat down, the two made small talk as she told him about Kumo and he in return talked to her about Konoha. Eventually, he got her to actually break into a natural, genuine smile. It was better than the view of the village. You should really smile more often, Nar whispered as he removed his coat and wrapped it around her before resting his elbows on his knees, missing her small blush. Who would have thought he'd be such a gentleman? Nar gazed at the village with a relaxed expression. This whole day was pretty fun, he had to say. Learned a lot about Simui and really wanted to hang out with her, let alone see her again. Eventually, Nar smiled and extended his hand. Let's get you to where you're staying for the night. I'm sure you're exhausted from all the walking, Nar said as he stared at her eyes. Simui looked at his hands before slowly placing her hands in his. And her face went from impassive to brief shock as he used his strength and tossed her onto his back before catching her thighs and turning towards the cliff. Hold on. Two began wrestling before Nar touched her side, causing tight was the only warning she got before he jumped off of the faces, surprising Simui as he took her on a peaceful ride throughout the village. Eventually, and sadly, in Simui's opinion, they reached the inn she was staying in. Naruto put her down in front of her door. I hope you enjoyed the tour of Konoha. Maybe we could hang out again, you know, Nar said as he scratched the back of his head. Simui said nothing before slowly walking up to him. Nar began to get nervous as most of the times the females he knew would approach him to hit him. So he began to panic. I mean only if you want to. I mean I don't want to. He was silenced by a chaste kiss to his whiskered cheeks, causing his eyes to widen and him to flush. Slowly touching his cheeks, he turned to see her smiling at him with her hands clasped in front of her. Thank you for the trip around the village, Naruto, and for making this decision so much easier. I didn't even know it, but you are the one I've come to Konoha for. Nar smiled, not having a clue about her thoughts. Before watching her walk towards the end. Anytime. Nar replied as he turned away and walked away silent, hands in his pocket and eyes towards the moon. Simui looked at him before remembering his trench coat was still wrapped around her. She decided to keep it so she'd have another excuse to see him. Besides, she'd be here for the next year. So she'd have many opportunities. Nar smiled as he lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling with Koshi curled up on his stomach. Best mission ever. The mission was a failure. What was supposed to be a simple escort mission became an ambush from some weird auto nins who should have been killed a long time ago. Apparently, this group was the last batch of nins still alive after that war. So, when 60 N show up just to kill 3 Konoha shinobi and 1 shinobi after making their way back to Konoha from their mission, something was obviously wrong. Anko Midarashi, for once, was afraid. The last time she had been afraid was when she was in the middle of the mob that was about to kill her. When she was defenseless and weak, she refused from then on to show weakness. But now with the remaining 50 or more against just her as the other 3 nins with her gave their lives to get her away from them. Her left arm was dislocated. Kana and shuriken all over her body. It looked inevitable. She was going to die. She would die without her dango. She would die without getting this stupid seal off of her neck. She would die still being feared by Konoha. She would die single with no man to care for her, no man to love her, nobody to hold her. In these last seconds, it was over. Here is Shin no Jutsu. She was right. It was over. Her eyes snapped open to find herself in an empty field, and in the arms of a blonde-haired shinobi. But the 4th was dead, so this could only be. Are you okay, Snake? Said a voice in a serious tone. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, the strongest Junin out of the rookie 9, who also started off as the dead last of the group. Son of Minato Namikaze, 4th Hokage, godson of Jiraiya, the Toad Sannin, trained by him, and Kakashi Hideki, son of the White Fang. His look was so stoic, a look that didn't look right on him. But she could feel the concern in his voice. What happened was Enko's simple response as she gazed into his Saruan orbs that were fixed on her. Then, a smile appeared. Oh, that's easy. I was patrolling this area. Seeing as how we have taken over Rice Country when I came across 3 dead Konoha nin and 8 dead Auto nins with 2 on the brink of death. I interrogated 1, and then sent both Kunoichi to Konoha for treatment and further interrogation. Then I found you curled up in a ball, with about 40 nin about to kill you. So I did my awesome jutsu and killed or disabled them. Then went to Konoha to ask for reinforcements. Then came back and grabbed you. And now we are outside of Konoha about half of a mile. You're very injured, so I had to stop here. Otherwise, you'll possibly die with the speed I was going. And the amount of blood you're currently dripping. It's pretty late, so we should prepare firewood. Enkoan. Don't you agree? Said Nar all in one breath. Enko was floored. She wouldn't let this opportunity go to waste. She was alive. She had a chance to eat dango, to shower again, to live again. 2. Ango gazed into his cerulean eyes again, and her eyes watered. The last time she cried was in the arms of the Sandaime Hokage when he gave her a chance to be a ninja again. When she threw him to the floor and baldled in his Junin flag jacket and felt him rubbing her back and telling her it was okay, she knew two things. She was crying again and she wanted to be held by him. When Anko came to, she found herself warm and comfortable. She looked around to find herself underneath a warm knapsack in a tent with the sound of burning wood. I see you're awake, I hear. How is everything? Said a voice that Anko knew was Nar. Better, was her simple reply as she slowly crawled out her tent or tried to. Pain shook through her body as she gasped in shock. In 2 seconds, she felt strong arms hold her shoulders. You're in a lot of pain right now, Ankoan. Moving on your own is not possible right now. Let me help you. Nar lifted Anko into his arms bridal style and set her down next to a tree before sitting on his log, not seeing the small blush that appeared on her face. When was the last time someone did that for me? She asked herself. So, what happened? Nar asked after passing her a ration bar that was ramen flavored. Anko inwardly shrugged as she ate the ration and told her the story of what happened with the escort mission and the ambush. Nar nodded in contemplation. We'll be heading to Konoha in the morning. I'll take you to the hospital where they will fully heal you and then I'll take you to the Hogue's office so you can report the mission. But since you're awake, I was looking at that seal. Nar raised his eyebrow a bit. When he seen her hand unconsciously moved towards her neck. To feel nothing, I took it off. I don't know how long you had that on, but it couldn't have been for a good be screaming at one another and then act like nothing happened in seconds. This was only the second day. Troublesome. You two sound like a married couple, Shikamaru said, sitting on the couch as he watched the two butting heads and growling at one another. Like I would want to marry him. Her. They simultaneously screamed before noticing the other say the same thing. What you say? Stop saying what I'm saying. You're doing it again. The two continued, saying what the other was saying at the same time. Shikamaru just wanted to hang with Nar and play shogi. Maybe stare at the clouds, things like that. Now, he just wanted to solve this issue and go back to relaxing. Look, it's obvious both of your prides won't allow you to admit that you enjoy one another's company being the way things usually occurred when you trust others, seeing as how one of your sensei defected and abandoned you and another's best friend tried to kill him. But I am pretty sure you both know how to trust others and not be like the people that hurt you. So just get over it and admit you want to be in the other's life. You two are too strong to be acting so foolish. Get over it. Anyway, I am going home. By the way, Shikamaru moved one piece to finish the game and left, lighting his cigarette before opening the game and blowing it. Checkmate. Spelled out the smoke. I need to learn how to do that, Naruto to himself before sighing. He's right, Nar said as he sat down next to Anko. I don't mind having you as a friend. I think it would be a good friendship. Seeing our past has some similarities, Nar said as he averted making eye contact with her. Anko was silent before breathing in and out slowly before grasping his chin and looking at him. Well, first friends. Look one another in the eye instead of blushing and looking away, she said with a smile as Naruto turned red in embarrassment. Sorry. No problem. Look, I am willing to be your friend as well. It's just a lot to take in right now, so forgive me if I'm acting out. No one has ever done so much for me for no reason, and the last person that did Naruto knew what she was going to say and shook his head. In disagreement. I will never abandon you. Anko could see the determined look in his eyes and knew he wouldn't. Good. Now hold me again, Anko said as she crawled into his laps. Do friends do this? Hold one another? Nar asked, in a low voice. It had been years that he longed to be held. He never made a big deal about it, but when she wrapped her arms around him, he felt all those years of longing coming back full force. Yes, they do, Anko whispered as she soon fell asleep. Nar smiled before nodding off again. Kiyoshi soon joining them and falling asleep as well. The birds chirped as a new day arose over Namikaze Nar as he awoke on the couch with Midarashi Anko on his chest still awake. Not that he minded. Who wouldn't want to awake to someone so beautiful? Nar stared at the ceiling and thought about all that had occurred in the past few weeks. First was the encounter with Ino. Then it was taking Simui on a tour of the village. And finally Anko, who now lived with him until she recovered fully from her injuries. Nar sighed. What is next? Then the doorbell rang. Nar created a clone by the door and swapped places with it. When he opened the door, N was awaiting for him. Nar blinked before sighing. Give me 5 minutes. I'll be at the tower. The Anbu nodded. Before disappearing, Nar got showered, brushed, and dressed before deciding not to go dressed for a mission. The Anbu didn't say to anyway. Dressing in a plain t-shirt with jeans and some combat boots, Naruto headed out for the tower. Kiyoshi wrapped around his neck. Hokage Tower. Sununade was smiling. She finally had her revenge on the brat. Nar would finally get what he deserved for that paper incident and then some. It was in the form of the regal figure awaiting the person coming in right about. The door opened and in came Nar with his eyes closed and his hands holding his fox pet. What is it you want? Ba Chan. Nar froze on the spot once he saw just who was in the office. Shi-chan whispered, Nar, shock apparent on his face. He hadn't seen her in years and she looked stunning. She had on a simple white dress that went down to her ankles with red, yellow, and blue flowers at the bottom. In her hand looked to be a scroll, and by her feet was an arrangement of suitcases and the like. Nar smiled finally and opened his arms as she ran into his arms, blushing as he picked her up and spun her around. How have you been? Asked Nar. He couldn't wait to share his stories and hear her stories in return. That can wait until later on, said Sununade as she cut him off and prepared for the trap. Sheen is on vacation for the time being as she is taking a leave for personal reasons. As such, she requested stay in your residence seeing as how she knows you and you have much space in your complex, said, knowing he wouldn't remember about Anko's staying or that he didn't know about the coming person either. Ah, Minato, Kasha, Jiraiya, Serbi, I hope you're watching. Of course, she can. Stay with me, said Naruto with a grin, hands still holding on to Sheen, who was still blushing, but had a content look on her face. A few shadow clones appeared ceeless, and began picking up the bags. So, how would you like to take a walk around the village before we go to the house? We could talk then, said Nar. I would like that, Sheen said with a smile. Great. Then, we're off. See you later, Ba-chan, said Nar as he left the room with a still red in the face. Sheen, I hope you haven't forgotten what I asked you for, Narokan. 4 hours later, Nar and Sheen talked throughout the day into the afternoon about what had occurred for the both of them since the mission in Demon Country. Every time the conversation would get close to whether or not Sheen had a relationship, she would change the conversation and sputter. Suddenly, as they passed by a restaurant, Sheen's stomach growled kind of loud. Hungry. Ya, said Nar with a grin, chuckling at her embarrassed blush. Come, I'll take you to my favorite spot. To eat, said Nar with a smile as he led her to Ikyaku's ramen shop. Ikyaku's ramen shop. Hey, old man. 3 bowls of miso soup and some beef for Sheen for starters, yelled Naruto as he brought the blinds to the side and sat down, patting his seat next to him for Sheen to sit down. Oh, and who is this girlfriend of yours? Asked Tui as he brought the steaming bowl down in front of Nar and Sheen. Nar blushed a bit and scratched the back of his head. Hee, as if someone as beautiful as Sheenheim would want to go out with me, said Nar with a chuckle. Sheen smiled. You never know, Nar. I just might take you up on that offer of being your girlfriend. Sheen laughed, as Nar choked on his ramen in shock. Tui chuckled as he walked away to let Nar talk his way out of that situation. Nar sighed in delight before suddenly looking outside and smiling. I want to show you something, said Nar. Suddenly as he put a wad of bills on the table for the ramen. Come, let's go, Nar said, extended his hand. Sheen was silently wondering what was he up to before finally grabbing his hand. Sheen blushed suddenly as he brought her up to his chest and wrapped his arms around her waist. Does he know? Is he ready to help me? Were her thoughts at the moment. She was interrupted as his baritone voice rung in her ear. Hold tight. In a swirl of leaves, they were gone from the restaurant. Valley of the End. As she opened her eyes, a gasp of surprise, awe, and shock occurred. The only description she could give as to where she was right now was breathtaking. Nar landed on top of the first Hokage statue, giving them a view of the waterfalls and countless trees and wildlife that littered over the area. This is the place where I and Sasaki fought, Nar said suddenly, eyes distant and looking at the exact area they talked and fought at. We came here at least twice to fight. The second time was when I won and carried him back to Konoha, Nar said as he finally let go of Sheen, much to her disappointment, and sat down at the edge of the first head. It's funny learning how history repeats itself. I am of Senju blood and Sasaki was of Uchiha blood. We fought 2 times and changed the landscape to what it is now. This has now become our training ground. We fight here, we talk here, and we plan here. This is the best area in all of Fire Country to me. Because it means the most to me, said Nar. Sheen slowly walked towards him before sitting down behind him and draping her arms around him. Why would you share this area with me? Said Sheen after a few moments of feeling the embrace and becoming one with him. Nar was silent for a few minutes, thinking about how to reply. I don't know. It just felt like the right thing to do, you know, said Nar with a sheepish grin. Sheen said nothing before moving to sit in front of him. Slowly, she tilted his chin up and looked him straight in the eyes. I do know, Nar. Then she kissed him. It felt like the right thing to both of them. Come, let's take you to where I stay. It's getting late and you look a bit tired, said Naruto as he scooped her up and jumped off into the trees to head back to Konoha by the scenic route. She unclosed her eyes and heard nothing but the melody of his heart and hers resonate. Hell be a good father. He's so thoughtful, strong, and he cares. I knew he would be the one. I need to tell him what I meant back then. But when? How? Namikaze residence. Anko. I'm home, yelled Naruto as he came into the house. Sheen, following behind him. When she heard him call out a woman's name, she thought maybe it was a maid or his cousin. When said person entered the room, however, Sheen knew that this was not anyone related to him. Anko hobbled up to the 2 koshi wrapped around her neck before seeing the new arrivals and rushing over to be petted by Sheen, who soon obliged. Ah, good to see you're awake still. Enko, this is Sheen, priestess of ex-priestess for the moment, Narkin. I'm on vacation, corrected Sheen as she stared down Enko with a bit of fear. Wonder Nar couldn't tell. Enko just grinned. Nice to meet you, Enko said as she bowed towards her before jumping into Naruto's arms. Now I believe you owe me a massage. No, Naruto, purred Enko as she poked him with each syllable to his name. Nar pouted. Fine, let me show in her room first, and then I'll meet you there, said Nar, not knowing what Enko was really doing or feeling the killer intent coming from Sheen. Thanks, Narkin. You're such a good man. One day you'll make the perfect husband. Treating me like this. I should just keep you all to myself. And be your wife, said Enko in a tone Nar couldn't tell if she was serious or not. So he laughed nervously. I try my best. Enko-chan, said a red-faced Nar as he quickly put her down and grabbed Sh's hand, dragging her upstairs. He put his head down to cover his flush. I wouldn't mind being married to Enko-chan either. Midnight. Nar lay down on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Things were moving too fast for him right now. If he were to think about it, what was it with all of these females suddenly appearing and acting so different towards him? Not that he didn't think they were all beautiful in their own way. It was just very convenient for them to suddenly appear just when he learned that. A tap on the window interrupted his thought. Nar looked to his window to see a cloaked figure at the door. Thinking it was Anbu, Nar got up and walked towards it. He opened the door only to shake in shock and surprise. He was not prepared for what was on the other side, but the other side was prepared for him. A whip wrapped around his neck and pulled him out of his house. Koshi patted over and pushed the door closed, yipping as it went back to sleep on the bed. Outside, Nar flew through the air from the window for what felt like minutes, before crashing into a tree before a poof went off, signifying it was merely a clone. The cloaked figure stood there for a minute before disappearing in a swirl of water. Knowing he would follow, when the figure arrived at an empty field, she threw the kunai to the other side and awaited his arrival. In a flash, Nar appeared, Jun outfit on and daggers in hand held in a reverse grip in front of his face. If it's a fight you want, it's a fight you got, Nar said with a grin. Wasting little time, Naruto ran over to the figure in a burst of speed, sending the ground up in the air with each step. He then jumped high in the air and came down in a downward slash with both hands, to which the figure pulled out two kana and blocked his assault, inwardly shocked as her kana cracked. With one hit, the figure pushed him and dropped her kunai before being in his face in 2 seconds. Nar was confused at his speed. Then a palm thrust hit him dead in his chest, sending him flying into a tree. Before he could recover, the figure was again in front of him. The figure then grabbed his head and kissed him. Nar fell into a daze as the person's lip touched his and melted in her embrace. Then the figure spoke. Find me, Naruto-kun. Then she disappeared. Nar said nothing at all. His eyes were wide opened and his mouth was as well. He stayed in the same spot before standing up slowly and walking back home. Retrieving his thrown kunai, he looked at it for a few seconds before smiling. Two can play that game. Hinata Sinead was sitting on her couch sipping on sake with a relaxed look on her face. The day wasn't that bad. Besides personally handing out missions and signing thousands of paperwork, it was nice to finally settle down for a bit. Her thoughts were on Naruto and possibly giving him the title of Hokage. He had done everything needed, but she decided he needed to get his priorities straight in terms of settling down. Speaking of such a thing, shouldn't he be here by now to discuss what happened? The sound of the door opening was heard before, just as she guessed. Came in Uzumaki Naruto with a thoughtful and confused face. Ba-chan nodded and patted the seat next to her. Sit down. It took you long enough to come to me, said Tsunade. She then handed him some sake and told him to explain what he needed help with. Nar told her everything from the hug from Ino to the kisses from the other girls to the feeling of waking up with Enko sleeping next to him and finally finishing with Hinata's sudden appearance. Tsunade was silent before smirking. What is there to be confused about? Marry them all. Tsunade chuckled as she watched Naruto spit out his sake while coughing out words she couldn't understand. Ba-chan, this isn't a joke. I'm dealing with emotions here. How do I get through with this? What if they ask me to decide between them? Asked Nar as he stared at his cup. She sighed before getting serious. Nar, you're a grown man now. You can only get older. Time is short. I think if you get to know them furthermore, you'll find the one for you. Hang out with them equally. Take them out on dates. That way you can figure out which one strikes your fancy, said Tsunade as she patted his head like a mother would a child. Nar smiled before putting the sake down and leaning onto Sade's lap as she ran her fingers through her head. This became a normal routine. After a while, Nar would drop by and Tsunade would answer any question he had. Only when they were in the company of one another would they act like a real family. After a while, Nar spoke again. So, I'm thinking of a way to properly greet Hinata. Seeing as she really did surprise me tonight, said Nar as he spoke in low tones, feeling comforted by his adopted grandmother. Do you now mind sharing how you plan on doing that? Said Tsunade with a smirk. Throughout the night, Nar gave some ideas, and Tsunade either approved or would slap him on the head for coming up with such a foolish idea. Up until the sunrise, the two talked and relaxed, something ninja don't do often, but family did whenever they got the chance to. Hinata woke up to smell the sweetest smell in her entire life. It smelled like cinnamon rolls. Hinata snuggled into her bed before realizing one thing. She didn't eat cinnamon buns. Hadn't eaten it in a year ever since she left for her special training program with Konan sensei. She suddenly sprung out of bed to find an assortment of cinnamon rolls displayed over her dresser in a box with a note on it. As she picked up the note, she suddenly smiled. Dear Hinata, by picking up this picture, you have begun the H-Nata challenge. The trials you will endure involve your personality and all the special attributes that make you who you are. Taking one bite of these cinnamon rolls will make your first letter equals heavenly. If you would channel chakra into the bottom of this note, you will be led to the next challenge and note. Enjoy the sweets first. There. Handmade. Sincerely, the sage. Hinata smiled sweetly as she read the last line before deciding to eat her breakfast. Taking up a orange frosted roll, she took one bite and felt like she was on cloud 9. These were amazing. Faster than Naruto eaten ramen. The entire roll was finished before Hinata decided to save the rest for later. Getting ready to leave for her hunt for the next clue. She channeled chakra into the note and giggled softly at the next clue before leaving the Hyuga mansion to do the next challenge. Konoha Stadium. Hinata walked to the front doors to see a weird seal on the entrance. Not recognizing it, she deducted that it was something not for regular eyes. As she put her bogan on, she read the seal before walking up to it and putting chakra through the seal. The doors opened with a click and Hinata opened the door to find 100 smiling nudos in different outfits, styles, and sizes. Hinata marveled at the sight, and if she was herself 4 years ago, would have fainted already. But, after confessing her love to him, this was just a walk in the park. After thinking about what he wished for her to do, she nodded as she began dispelling each clone that did not look like the real him, including a Nar dressed in Jiraiya's garb and a red-haired Nar. She chuckled at that, and an extremely shy-looking Nar. She sweat dropped at that. Finally, she arrived at the final two Narutos dressed in Hokage garbs. After staring at them with her bogan, she finally noticed the one difference. One had no cute whisker marks. Dispelling that one, the final Naro smiled. You have completed the challenge. Here is your next clue. And scroll. Handing the girl the scroll, the clone saluted. Before dispelling himself, Hinata opened it up. Congratulations. You have completed the intelligence challenge equals intelligent. Your knowledge was always top-notch in my book. You are the smartest woman I know. Now for your next challenge. Follow the tail. The sage Hinata looked around before seeing a waving tail at the end of the entrance. Walking towards it, she watched as the tail waved before walking off. Hinata followed at a slow pace. Before speeding up as the tail started turning corners faster. After running through the Bathos, Hokage monument and past her own home, she found the tail waving inside of Ikyaku's. Hinata walked in to find a yipping Kyoshi licking ramen with a Yame next to him. Ah, Hinata. Welcome back. And I mean the sage wanted me to give this to you. Giggling. Ayame handed Naruto a note. And a leash that was tied to Koshi. Hinata. The next letter. That makes your name as nurturer. Your usage of healing ointments and carefulness with nourishing plant life proves to me that you care for all things in a very delicate manner. As such, I put my trust in you by leaving you to take care of Koshi here. Nourish him, train him, feed him, teach him, because this quality is one I have learned how to do from you. So why not let the teacher show the student how it's done? The sage Hinata smiled before taking Kyoshi for a walk after he finished his ramen academy. After taking Koshi back to the manor, letting Hanab rub its belly, feeding him some fine cuisine and giving him a bath, Hinata let Koshi lead her to the academy and into the classroom of Iruka. Hinata-san. Right on time. I've been given this note to give to you, said Iruka with a knowing smile as he handed her the next clue. Hinata. Your next challenge is to be aspiring. How do you do that, you ask? Simple. Everyone wants to be like their sensei in some aspects anyway. As such, your challenge is to teach the kunoichi how to be the best that they can be. We wouldn't want another Sakura Ino accident now, would we? The sage Hinata chuckled as she awaited her next assignment. The room filled with the students returning form playing outside. As they filled in their seats, many of the young students either looked at the Hyuga with the fox or some just ran up and petted the fox before Iruka got the classroom to finally settle down. All right, class. Today, we are in for a special treat. The kunoichi will be getting a lesson from the next heir to the Hyuga clan herself, said Ruka, the females gasping in awe and amazement. Everyone knew of the valiant effort Hinata had put up to defend Naruto and Konoha during the Pain invasion. With that being said, the boys will be going outside to get some lecturing about the history of Konoha today, said Iruka. The males of the class groaning, some wanting to hear the discussion. Slowly but surely, the class was left with the young women in Hinata who breathed in and out to calm herself down. Well, being a kunoichi requires Hinata closed her eyes as she remembered her times with her team and the missions and friendship to family feeling. It requires a lot of important bonding with your teammates in addition to being strong enough to defend both yourself and your teammate. To be a kunoichi of Konoha means that you fight not only for your village, but you're out there facing the evils of the world. You find that you will fight your hardest, protecting whatever you held dear to you. If you hold Konoha dear to you, you'll fight for Konoha. If you hold your teammates dear, you'll fight your hardest. Did you mean it when you said you love me? I did. And if I had to do it again, I would. Because it's true, Hinata, I had to. Go. Nar, I need to be stronger. Don't wait for me. As long as you're happy, Naruto, that's all that matters. Hinata, goodbye, Narutkin, my love. If you love something, you'll die for it. Being a kunoichi to me, meaning you will fight for what you believe, for what you love with determination. Never give up. That has become my ninja code. And as a kunoichi of Konoha, Hinata finally opened her eyes to see the room in awe and silent, eyes filled with admiration, just like her eyes whenever she looked at Naruto. I will do my best to be the strongest I can be in order to make sure nothing happens to Konoha. Hinata finished. In the corner of her eye, she had seen a yellow flash just leave the area. She smiled. Any questions? After answering all the questions and hopefully giving the class a new perspective on being a ninja, Hinata got a note from one of the students who said it was just laying there on the table with her name on it. Reading the note, she made her way to the sacred battleground for her next challenge. Sacred battleground. This area was the part of Konoha that was not fixed but left to pay homage to all the ninja that fought for Konoha. Nar in particular. In the middle of the huge field was another stone showing the ninjas that died fighting off pain in a huge statue with Nar standing on top of the toads he came in with. Kiyoshi laid down by the statue so that Hinata can face the challenge on her own. In the middle of the field was Nar with a smile on his face. Are you ready for the next challenge, Hinata Chan? He asked. As she nodded, Naruto flashed through hand seals. Genjutsu Infinite Darkness Jutsu. All light left the area and Hinata was unable to see a thing. All she heard was a voice that sounded just like pain. Do you fear the unknown? He asked. Do you fear what you cannot see? How do you expect to live without knowing what tomorrow may bring? Why do you try? Who do you live for? Another voice spoke. Then another until 6 voices began asking questions in rapid succession before they all spoke as one. What is love? They repeated this question. Hinata knew they wanted an answer. She breathed in before answering. Love is to be fearless. It is to jump into the unknown, knowing you could die fighting. It is throwing away all nervousness and reason to do what's right. It's showing you care. You become stronger when you love someone. What do you love? Hinata smiled. I love those who never give up, who continue to fight through anything. Those who smile in the face of danger. I love my family. I love my teammates. I love my sensei. I love Konoha. And Hinata giggled as she realized what T stood for. The truth is, I've loved Nar since we were younger. Always have. Always will. The voice was silent before the darkness faded away. You pass. The area cleared away to reveal a note hanging on the Nar statue. Hinata picked it up inside in relief. She had to go change her clothing for this challenge. Konoha Park, 8 p.m. Hinata arrived at the gate of the park to find it closed. She found the gate open once she got within 6 in of it. Hinata had changed her outfit into a purple dress that went to her mid-thigh. She came with some of the rolls she had gotten this morning, as well as some more food that she had cooked herself. When she got into the middle of the park, she gasped. There were candles set up in a circle with a table in the middle. On it was 2 cups. and 2 plates with a lavender tablecloth underneath. Sitting to the left of the table was Kiyoshi. But it was the man standing behind her suddenly that had her attention. Strong arms wrapped around her and a deep voice whispered in her ear, "Welcome back, Hinata-chan." Hinata fell into his arms and felt comfort. Nar released her after a few minutes and guided her by hand to the table where she sat down. The two made small talk before Hinata sighed and smiled at Nar. "What is the real reason for all of this, Narutkin?" she asked suddenly. Nar too sighed. "It took her long enough to ask because I remember what you told me before fighting pain." Nar said. Hinata was silent, but if one were to look, you would see that her palm became sweaty and her hand was shaking. She had tried to forget about that confession. As such, she'd taken to trying to avoid being alone with Naruto whenever he was around. No matter how much he would try to talk to her, she would disappear. When the apprentice training trip with Conan came along, Hinata jumped at the opportunity to get away from Nar so that things can calm down and she would come back confident and ready to talk to Nar about what she said to him all that time ago. But as she peered into his blue eyes, she felt her years of training slowly falling apart. She was scared. She was worried. What would he say? Why did he affect her so? What was it about him that made her so nervous and scared? She jumped a bit as she felt her hand being grabbed by Nar. "I understand now why you were acting the way you were, Hinata," Nar said with a comforting smile. Hinata remained staring at him, her eyes unblinking and hanging on to every word. "You were afraid of what I would say, that I would deny your love and that hurt you more than anything else on earth. So, you figured if you could avoid me, you wouldn't have to hear it. You could hold on to your proclamation without hearing my response." Nar slowly rose out of his seat with his hand in Hinata's hand. "The quick excuses to leave whenever I came into a room, the constant missions you would go on. Whenever I was on a mission myself, the training trip for 2 years in AIM. Do you think I didn't notice you were avoiding me?" Nar said, his eyes looking a bit hurt, but also determined. Hinata felt a part of her die. She didn't mean to hurt Nar in any way, shape, or form. She didn't know that avoiding him like that was hurting him. How could she have been so stupid? Nar suddenly smiled. "Do you know what the last letter stands for, Hinata?" he said softly, slowly pulling her out of her seat. Hinata shook her head slowly, a bit surprised at the gesture of him wrapping his arms around her waist. "Let me show you." In a flash of light, the two were gone. Undisclosed location. When Naruto landed, Hinata held onto his shirt to stop her dizzy feeling. "Hey, sorry about that. I forgot. People aren't used to moving so fast," Nar said, rubbing his head. "It's okay," Hinata whispered as she looked around to where she was. She gasped. This was the first time Hinata ever talked to Nar the day he went off to fight at the Tunin exams. Except there was a dazzling array of floating candles. And was that a violin? "Amazing," Hinata whispered. Nar chuckled. "How you know the last letter?" Nar said softly before leading her into the middle. "There." He held her right hand and bowed. "May I have this dance?" Hinata nodded and giggled at his antics. As they danced under the moonlight with the sound of violins, Naruto finished his thoughts and finally spoke. "Hinata, this is the place where I told you I thought you were weird, but also the place where I told you I liked people like you. It's taken me a couple years, but I now realize the truth." Nar moved his head to look her directly in her eyes. "I've spent these past 2 years searching within myself for the answer and right response to your declaration, and it's simple." Nar smiled. "I've come to love you, Hinata. I've missed you in my life for the past 2 years. This hunt was done just for you because I've been saving the moment to do so for these past 2 years. Everything has to do with a part of you that I'm in love with. Nar said, your H stands for heavenly. Nar pulled away from her and kissed her right hand. Your I stands for intelligent. Nar kissed her forehead, getting a blush out of her. Your N stands for nurturer, kissed to her left hand. Your A stands for aspiring, kissed to her neck, another blush. Your T stands for truthful, kissed to her cheek. Nar blushed himself for the final one, but the A. Nar slowly leaned in before kissing her on the lips. The background burst into fireworks as the floating candles turned into bursting light. That faded away soon after. Hinata was in an amazing amount of serenity and peace. Her body shook and she was trying not to black out like she was so accustomed to doing. Nar finally pulled away from her lips, breathing slightly hard, just as she was. Suddenly, he smiled. Amazing. Nar smiled before relishing in her touch. But he soon frowned. The decision he had made concerning Hinata might change things. He just hoped that she wouldn't change just because of what he had to say. Hinata, I have something to tell you. Something that has come up in the time you've been gone. Hinata knew that it was serious judging by his tone, but at the moment, nothing could bring her down from the high she was feeling right now. Smiled at the sight of Naruto and Hinata hugging and talking. It took him long enough to smarten up. He had finally confessed how he felt. But how would she take the situation he was in? Sunade just shook her head. It would only get worse as things kept coming up. Like the specific Nin requested for the mission she received this morning. Poor Nar, said Shizune with a worried expression on her face. Smirked. If he's anything like his past sensei, it's more like Lucky, Nar said as she played with the scroll with the kanji for snow on the top of it. Nar dodged the kunai thrown at him absent-mindedly as he thought back to the night he had with Hinata and her reply to what he had told her concerning his current predicament. Was that even possible? Did she truly feel that way? If she did not, she really knew how to hide her feelings well, which is expected of a Hyuga clan member. Absent-mindedly dodging the strikes from the assailant. Nar also thought about the random early morning call he had received from Sununade about 2 missions he had to do, all wrapped in one. Apparently, Tamari Sububaku was in town and he was assigned to escort her to Suna before heading out to Spring Country to give a document to the princess while escorting her back to Konohatu. Nar can look in the mirror and tell himself that he was dense, but this entire mission seemed a bit far-fetched to him. First of all, Tamari has been going back and forth between Suna and Konoha for years now. What's the sense of keeping her company on the way there all of a sudden? Secondly, couldn't a Konoha Express Falcon deliver what he had and the princess be escorted by her own guards? Unless, of course, they specifically asked for him, that would be weird. But Naruto didn't care much. All he knew was he had to meet Tamari in 6 hours at the Konoha gates to begin heading to Suna, then Spring Country, and he really had no time to bother playing with this person that had been attacking him for the past 2 minutes. Ducking under a jab, Nar grabbed the person's arm before moving into their personal space back to their right side. Before Nar pulled the arm down, lifting the person in the air and crashing down onto the floor. Putting his legs to the other side of the person's face, Nar secured his hold and had the person in an armbar lock, causing the person to tap his leg in pain. Letting go of the arm, Nar rolled back up to his feet and grabbed Konohamaru up before ruffling his head. You'll have to do way better than that in order to defeat me. said Nar with a grin as he dusted himself off and turned around to head back to the village. Konohamaru sighed as he walked alongside Nar throughout the village. This wasn't the first time Konohamaru attacked him randomly and definitely would not be the last. Villagers seen it as a normal occurrence, so they did not bother with disturbing the antics of the last Serbi. So, how was your mission? Asked Naruto to Konohamaru as they continued their walk throughout the village, nodding to female villagers and speeding up their walk as a crowd began forming. It was pretty easy. Simple. Delivery to Kiri. Nothing too special. Wish there was some action, but that's been lacking a lot. Often as of late, replied Konohamaru as he sped up his walk as a bunch of females were right behind him and Naruto and were whispering. I suppose that's Nar trailed off as he looked behind him and found a bunch of females looking right at him and Konohamaru. How did ask Nar to Konohamaru only to see the little brat running away from the scene screaming something that sounded like may the will of fire be with you my brother. Nar's sweat dropped before smiling. Ladies, 15 minutes later, after getting gloamed from all angles. Cage bunch replacements, Shanhan and a Hishin seal on his door. Nar slammed the front door of his house. Panting and sweating with his clothing, looking like he ran through a shredder machine. His face and body also had many different colors of kiss marks. Nar sighed in bliss at the escape he had managed to pull off. Taking his time to compose himself, Nar made his way into the house. To his knowledge, Enko would be somewhere in an area she wasn't supposed to be in, trying to do something she wasn't supposed to be doing. Like in the underground training arena, chucking kunai at targets. But he supposed that was to be expected as she was just like him and lying down and doing nothing was not his forte either. Apparently, Enko was fully recovered and no problems had risen from her seal being removed, except a few differences that Nar neglected to tell her, not knowing how she would react. But watching Enko suddenly have loads of chakras suddenly appear in her chakra coils, enhanced hearing and healing arise in her metabolism, and extreme stamina, he figured today was a good time to tell her. He had about 3 hours he could use dodging all sorts of weaponry she would throw at him after Sade broke to him what now had to occur. Should he even think about it now? Probably not. He should go and tell Anko. That Hokage tower. Sununade sighed as she brought up her next development she had to relay to Nar. I recently did some test on Anko Midarashi concerning her removal of her seal, said Sununade as she looked at Nar seriously. And asked Nar impatiently as Sununade loved to drag out answers. Well, apparently when you removed her seal, your chakra began to be used as a catalyst to replace the excess chakra remaining in her systems from Orochimaru's taint. Replies. Basically, what I'm saying is, Enko has developed some rather peculiar abilities from having her chakra inserted into her system. I've talked it over with the council. I wish I could change the final decision, but I